Guys, it's nice to see you virtually. I know some of you may be actively involved in school and some of you may be starting summer mode. We are start summer mode Fridays in our world, but also actively working and around. So know that we're always here when you need us. Like Emily and I were saying just a second ago, it's nice to see people from buildings all over the place. So welcome.
Yeah, and Emily, as you start, I'm just gonna keep letting people in, so you don't have to.
Okay, cool. All right, good. You do that part and I'll do this part. Great. So thank you for being here. As I said, we are going to start today. The session 1 was about the introduction in Leverage Leadership. This is the short answer, and it just kind of gives you your bearings on like, what is this book about? What did I sign myself up for? What can I expect in the future chapter? So more so our agenda today is kind of just setting norms for our session today and our future session, and then kind of just reminding you that this is for you. Emily and I chatted this morning, and our hope is that we aren't talking so much. We may talk a little bit heavier today than future sessions, but we really want this to be a time for you to collaborate with each other. In a sense that reading a book, especially a book like this, you kind of have your building in mind, but it's pretty powerful when you can digest this text alongside other professionals in similar situations as yourself, and that they may think of something or interpret something a litof different, or kind of just be able to deepen your regarding what you have read and the comprehension of what you've read. Okay, so today we're going to talk about 1, which is about the introduction. Logistics, Emily, we're both here. I'm Emily Baker, the Director of Academic Programs at the District Office. One of the buckets that Emily, Paul, and I share is in regards to kind of leadership development. And so this is one of those things that we decided this year that we would add to our plate, because this text would be beneficial to all leaders. So we're very excited to have you, and we along the way welcome your feedback on it if you like this. Virtual setting is kind of hard for book studies, but hopefully you enjoy every single second. We don't want to waste your time, so your feedback is welcome throughout the process at any time. Emily, hellos.
Yeah, hi everybody, it's Emily Paul. I'm the Chief Program Officer. We're really excited. We did not expect to have such a great turnout, so thank you guys just for being willing to participate. We hope that everybody kind of learns something along the way, regardless of where you are in your leadership career. So the other thing I would say is, if we're going to have you muted all right now, if you need anything, feel free to use the function, and then we're also going to use that raise hand function for when you want to make a comment or ask a question. So we'll get more into that in a minute, but just wanted to give you that now. So I think there's maybe a chat here. I'm just looking. All right, go ahead, Emily.
All right, so as we kind of mentioned, why is really just to do this for you. We're going to meet across 5 weeks. Monday did not work for us this week, so apologies to start kind of on a random Wednesday, but we will meet the next Mondays coming up. So we began this week, we'll end and wrap up at the end of June on June 29th, okay? We'll remind you each session kind of what your future reading is. You'll see today that we'll kind of leave with a task for you to think about, and it will also remind you of what your upcoming reading is to best be prepared for next week's session. All right, so here, these fake names, these are probably that you may come across an email or in a professional setting, but these are leaders from all over the state. Here are some of you. If you're not on here, you might be on the next one. Take a second to study everybody's headshot.
And Emily and I had discussed this morning, if everybody, I'll probably send out an email to ask if everyone's comfortable, but we would love to share your contact information so you guys can also network maybe at the end of our sessions.
Yeah, and we have joining us some new administrators that just joined our district. Jerome on here. Jerome is starting a brand new charter this July with our district. So he is opening a new school and growing himself professionally alongside. So props to Jerome and welcome to everyone. There's some more smiling faces. Oh, excuse my 5-pound Yorkie. And some more. And of course, there's my Richard Shepard. Love your emoji. I'm not up with the times. But of course, Richard would do that.
If you don't see your face on here, it's either I didn't see it until too late or I'm having an issue with your picture. So we will add, as pictures continue to come in, we'll add you all to the next session slides.
All right, so what we're going to do now is kind of just create some norms together. I don't want to create these for you. I'd like you to create them. So if anybody would like to add in the chat box or unmute yourself and kind of shout out, what do you believe our norms should be in this session and in future sessions for this book study?
And we are getting used to using Teams. So if you don't have the option to unmute yourself, go ahead and on the toolbar, it should be kind of in your bottom middle. There's a little hand there. You can press that and I can unmute you.
Oh, you don't know. My bad. All right. Any norms coming in?
Let's see. Yeah, we got something in the chat. So Tanika says respect for diverse perspectives. Yes, thank you so much for that.
It's well worded too. We all come from different backgrounds and schools. So some of you may be in a charter that's just high school. Some of you are K through 12. Some of you are just early childhood. So that's a good one, Tanika. Good suggestion.
Yep, and Corrigan at PSA says what happens in the group stays in the group. I appreciate that too. This is really a learning environment, and so let's respect that so everyone feels safe to share.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you're vulnerable sometimes and start a hard conversation, it's the best way to grow. So I agree there.
John at Bridges says engage, which I totally agree. John, I think I put that in one of my emails. Like if you want to be a part of the group, make sure you're doing your reading and engage in our conversation, because the more perspectives and dialogue we have, I think the more of it we will learn. So thank you for that, John. And then Jerome says soapbox avoidance. I agree with that too.
I like it. Yeah, how about I put share the mic? Is that good?
Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question? I've never used Teams before, and I don't see the chat.
Okay, so there should be a toolbar across the bottom of your screen that has like where you can mute yourself.
Right.
Do you see that? Okay, there should be like a little, it looks like a little instant message kind of box. You see that?
Share?
No, mine is next to where my raise hand function is.
I don't have a raised hand function either.
You don't have that either. Okay. Do you have 3 dots?
I do.
Click on those and let's see if it's in there.
I don't see it in there.
Huh. Weird. I'm not sure. Do you have like 2 little people icons?
I do. That just shows me the participants.
Yeah, but it doesn't give that.
Do you have the little? Right next to that. Do you have the one that looks kind of like a comic book text thing? That's one that says show conversation when you click it, and that's how I see it.
Yeah.
I wonder if it is because I downloaded the Mac app, and maybe I need
maybe.
Yeah.
And Tamika, are you on your Mac? I was gonna say, Tamika, I know normally has a Mac. If Tamika, do you see it on your Mac maybe?
This is Tamika Whitmire. I'm on my Mac and I download the Mac app and I still see it.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure who was saying that, but if you can talk, that's fine too.
Okay, and I was going to say, and I don't have any of those features on mine either. Okay, and I was going to say I'm Heidi Bishop, and mine are all to the left. I'm on a PC, and all those things are on my left of my screen. They're not at the bottom, so maybe they're to people's left.
Somewhere else, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Emily and I can share out too after. We'll look and see. We're also new to Teams. In the past month, we've switched from Zoom to Teams over COVID. So we can publish that information to all of you as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry, Kathy. Okay, so we have created these 4. Anyone have anything else to add or to enhance one of these? All right, so we're going to go ahead and keep going, and we'll revisit these each session. So all good reminders here. Okay, so as we've mentioned, you're only going to get out of this what you put in. So participation is key. The pre-reads are very important. We're not so much going to like give you a synopsis of each chapter, more so as you'll see today, we've kind of pulled out some big ticket items to begin your conversation and to facilitate that way. But then we're pretty much going to open the floor to you to be able to participate in the conversation beyond just our big bucket items. So pre-reading for each session is going to be important for you, and then come ready to contribute. We don't want to have those that give and some that take. We want to kind of have an even playing field across the board. So participation is key here for all. All right, so our first discussion point, and Emily, I'm not watching the chat box, so if you see something, just chime in.
I sure will, yep.
Here are 2 bullets that stuck out to me as I read as kind of important mentions. So as I read these, I want you to kind of think, can you put faces to these quotes? I know when I was reading text, I kind of felt like, ooh, in my last school, I know exactly who these people were. So put faces to these. And then I want us to have the discussion. We don't need to call people out right now as far as your staff names and such, but what are you going to do about it? So that's what our discussion should be. So when you put the faces to these thoughts, what now can you do about it? So from page 1, the quote read, "Some were so used to the way things were, they didn't see the need for change. Others saw the need, but didn't think it was done." And then the second quote here, on page 3, "What makes education effective? The answer, great teaching." So who in your building is reluctant to change? Who in your building knows that they need change but isn't doing anything about it? And who in your building are those amazing teachers? So kind of think about that for a second. And just so you'll know, I'm totally cool with wait time. And share out, like, what are you going to do about these once you put faces to these quotes?
Hey, Emily, the one message we got is from Sarah saying your mic is going in and out. So I'm not sure if it's like, maybe move your computer a little bit closer.
Okay. I will talk louder too. I'll put my teacher voice on.
Thanks.
Oh, my bad.
So Brandy says data talks, and let me unmute Brandy to see if she wants to say any more about that. Maybe I can't.
Okay, I unmuted myself.
Oh, there you go.
I mean, I think that some of the things that were brought up, were things that I even questioned, as a new leader. What about the people who don't know that they need to be doing better? And I had someone that I thought highly of say, well, what does the data say? And I was like, oh yeah, there you go. So, I'm learning a lot I have learned a lot over the last 2 years, and I'm still have a lot to learn, but it's not about your opinion as administrator and whether or not you think somebody's good or bad. You show them the numbers and say, hey, what are we going to do about this? And you start a coaching, conversation.
Yeah. So Brandy, give us some examples. What kinds of data points would you pull out? Are you thinking like observation?
Oh, like map.
Assessment data.
Testing. Yeah, map testing. Because a teacher could technically manipulate their grade book and make it look like everybody is rock stars. And so, but the map data and the state assessments, as much as everybody hates them, it still can sometimes show you where the opportunities are.
Right.
And unless everything looks perfect, then everybody's got room to grow.
Right. Yeah. So what I hear you saying is you may use that data, especially that student data, to identify that amazing teaching, and then maybe be able to hone in on that and say, like, what are you doing that works? What can we learn from you? But then that data may also lead you to, hey, this person may be struggling and in need of change, and we didn't necessarily identify it yet. So what are we going to do about it now? Is that what you mean?
Or you had a teacher who didn't think there was any room for improvement. They don't think they need any help. And then you show them their scores from the year before and say, okay, these kids aren't where they need to be. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to change? Because they're still not where they need to be. Like, what can you do differently?
Yeah. So you're really going to switch to put your coaching hat on and not show them the data, but now say, okay, what are we going to do about it together, and kind of make,
right.
You're going to switch to your coaching hat from your administrator hat. That's good. Anybody else?
Yeah, so we've got some in the chat box. So Tanika says peer observations. We've also got Bridges, who says, being in a new building this year, I was impressed by the coachability and willingness of the teachers at my school to sharpen their teaching skills through professional development. That's awesome. Patsy at YLA, continue to encourage a culture of growth where everyone understands that improvement is a way of life for all of us. Yes, so important. Jerome, he says, he agrees in recruitment. I'm finding that people are coming, I gotta expand this. Coming to us as a charter because they do want change. They see the need and hope that it can be done. I'm hoping to leverage that hope and their growth mindset. And Courtney at Midlands Middle says the part that says didn't think it could be done. I think some teachers can get caught in the mindset that some things are just not in their control or power when there are things that could be done and that can be impactful.
Yeah.
So if any of y'all want to make further comments on those, feel free to unmute yourself. And then we've got Mary Nell at Greenville Tech, the part that's, oh wait, did I just, oops, I switched those. Sorry. That last comment was Mary Nell. Courtney at Midlands Middle has, instead of focusing on problems that need to be fixed, keep the conversation centered around continuous improvement. No one is perfect and we all have room to grow.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Yeah, to Courtney's point, I think when we're all reflective and we all are in the growth mindset, that's when a lot can happen. I feel like educators either have that or they don't. Like they know that they're growers and they know they want to be continuous learners. And sometimes that's the hard conversation.
Yeah. And I think some of you guys have your recruitment process designed around that mindset to make sure the people you're getting have that growth mindset. Chase at Lead says a lot of it starts with interviews. There you go. And asking more questions about change and feedback, particularly when you had to change but didn't want to, than classroom management and nuts and bolts to get the right people. Yep. Hold on, the chat box is moving so fast. Hugh at Renaissance says the challenge is what Brandy is talking about when great teaching is arbitrarily determined. Is it that scholars are really performing well on normed assessments, or is it because scholars are engaged and enjoying being in school, or is it really determined by strong data? I think the idea of creating a culture of continuous improvement and the common language and mindset on what great teaching is, and that requires a strong professional development framework and vision sharing.
Yeah, that's good.
And then Tamikia, it's also important to ensure everyone understands it's okay to fail as long as they fail forward. I love that. Fail forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good too.
So y'all, if you want to unmute yourselves and discuss, please feel free.
I like that, Tamika. We've got to take that risk because we're not going to know if it works or not. And that too goes into your coaching, like spaces, and you may find that you have on board to take a risk with, you know, to maybe adopt something new or try something new. And you your group to get started on that, and that group that you identify on your staff to take that risk with you are those ones that aren't scared to fail. And as leaders too, do you identify when you have made an error or when you have tried something and it didn't work? Because it's for your teachers, especially your new teachers, to hear like, even my administrator makes mistakes.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So some more discussion points to kind of take us a little bit further. What is your balance of instruction and culture? So you as a leader, when you think about your time, where are you spending your time? And then your focus as a building, kind of what is the balance within your focus as an administrator between instruction and culture? What would you say is a focus for each of them? Like if you were to dive deeper into instruction, like what is your current, you know, big ticket bucket item for instruction? What is your big ticket item for culture? Putting a percentage on it and kind of thinking about how much time do you spend each week on these things? How much time do you spend in, you know, professional development with your staff on these? Where do you live and where does your building live? If that's not where you want to be, where do you want to be and what are you going to do about it? So like page 8 says, if instruction is strong but culture is weak, a school's success is crippled. So are you putting all of your eggs into the instructional basket and we've let kind of culture fall to the wayside, or at one point in time was culture your focus and now you need to kind of bring it back to even those two out? And then page 8 also says, the truth is that both instruction and culture are vital and both must be led simultaneously. So are you a 50-50? Are you a 60-40? Kind of where do you stand currently with in regards to instruction versus culture? And if you're not where you want to be, where do you want to be? And how are you gonna get there?
This is Jerome from Butler Academy. I'll jump in. As I'm thinking through this question, the first thought that comes to mind is that culture can drive the academic component. You embed a culture of excellence, culture of accountability, things along those lines, they can drive your academic excellence. I'm not sure if academics can drive culture, and if it does, I'm not sure you'll always like which way it drives it. So to me, it kind of seems like even though we emphasize one because we're a school, the other one actually creating that as your foundation would drive the other one.
Yeah, so like culture is the input and academic results are the output.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I agree. I think if you've got the focus on instruction is what's driving the culture, then you can end up more focused on your strategies or rigor and less on your relationships. But if the culture is driving this idea of excellence or accountability or whatever you make it, then you can definitely improve your instruction along those lines.
In the chat box, we've got PSA at 70 culture, 30 instruction, and she says moving towards 50-50. And Corrigan has been at PSA for a long time, but she has stepped into the school leader role. So she says, you know, the balance may be shifting over the course of the school's journey. Tanika and Margaret Crouch are both 50-50. Tanika again agrees culture should be the driving force. Brad at Midlands Arts has 50-50, but it fluctuates. It's more like a wave, give and take, than a hard percentage, which yes, I think sometimes it does, depending on what's going on in your school and just the time of year. I definitely think that it does fluctuate. Let me expand Amy's comments here. Amy at Low Country Montessori, having a clear delineation of roles within our leadership team is a focus moving forward. Culture is a huge focus always, and I feel like we do this well. The instructional piece is always a focus, and I feel that other things during the day pull us away from the focus as a leadership team. I have taught at Amy's school, and I would totally agree with that. Dwana Tillman, I believe it depends on the current situation of your school and then move forward towards 50-50. Hugh, I think the pendulum swings between culture and instruction as the year progresses and as your school grows and you attempt to indoctrinate new enrollees and families into the way things are done. And then Bridges, John, with new administration this year, we were 60% culture and 40% instruction. And again, I think Emily Baker and I both are very familiar with Gary, and it is all about culture with Gary at Bridges. I think I have our, maybe not. I thought I had a hand raised, but maybe not.
Yeah, we've got a couple. Lynette, go ahead. Lynette Hernandez.
Hi. I just wanted to say I'm at Green Charter School, and I think one of our strengths is as a smaller school, we're able to build that culture because everybody, excuse me, everybody does know everybody, and we're able to really focus on these students and who they are as an individual and how they function within a classroom setting. And I think that's so important because that's where trust is created, and that's where those students are going to want to do good by you, and they're going to want to really do their best and excel, and we have to support that. So I highly agree with everybody that's really placing an emphasis on culture, because that's definitely the building block for learning.
Yeah, and I think too, that made me think about it's culture in multiple capacities, and that it's to teacher, it's admin to staff, it's admin to students, it's student to student, it's teacher to student. So it's culture like as an adult team, as a staff, but it's also culture amongst students, and then kind of varying in between the staff and student roles. And that it's your students need to have the mindset of growth and excellence in academics, but culture to have that. They need to feel comfortable in their space to do that. And same thing, staff needs to be comfortable to feel okay in their environment to take those risks and to grow academics. So like y'all have been saying, the pendulum swings, it fluctuates back and forth, and it's across multiple levels depending on the audience at that time.
Yeah, I think that, Jerome had a follow-up question for Lynette. How big is smaller? And Lynette, you can probably answer that better than I, but I feel like y'all are between 300 and 500 students, right?
Yes, we are going to be close to 400 at the upper school campus as we start the new school year. So we're small.
Yeah.
Tanika, go ahead. Tanika has her hand raised.
Okay.
One. There you go.
I was thinking about you have to look at like where the school is. If it's a new school, then they may be working more on culture. If it's a more developed school, they may be looking at more instruction or academics. Thinking about East Point, and I'm at East Point, and we have two schools, two campuses. And when I first came, I've been there for a couple of years now. It was more of academics, looking at instruction, because the school was built on that. But as we progress, I see we're big on culture because we have got a different set of students now. Like when I came to East Point, we had students coming from all well-performing families, well-performing students. Now we have a huge mix. We have a very diverse population, and I love to see that. And so we have to make sure, which it should have been focused on them, but you learn, and you learn from mistakes and grow. So now we're big on culture because we want to make sure that culture piece is there. Everyone feels like they're part of the school. Everyone understands what is expected. And I think that the other pieces will fall in place. So I totally agree that culture is extremely important.
Great. Any other thoughts?
Let me scroll up in the comments here. Quick request from Amy Horn. When everyone signs in next time, would you mind putting your school name next to your name so that we can see where y'all are from? So I'm not sure how to change names. Mine, I feel like, is automatically set, but I can play with it and maybe send some instructions for next time. Jerome's just says, thanks for that clarification. I think it's important because someone else may call that big and say we can't do that. Yes. And then from Creeks, Margaret, she says it's easier to cultivate a strong culture in a small school. She's at 200. So I guess my follow-up question to that would be to some of our school leaders in bigger schools, how do you tackle culture in a big environment if you are tackling it?
So I was originally at a school of 1,800 for a high school, and I have to say it had a very strong culture. And I think a big part of that was the consistency of leadership and the consistent messages, the fact that there was lower turnover, so you had that historical knowledge and veterans poured into the younger teachers, but really having it so embedded in the people that were already there, and then consistently sending the same messages from leadership, I think are huge, no matter what size you are.
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar. It depends on the transiency of your student population and your staff. So the longer you're retaining staff and administration, that culture is kind of built, and it needs a little celebration here and there to kind of remind everybody and kind of re-excite everyone. But I completely agree with what Mary Nella said, that especially in those big schools, if you can retain staff and administration, that culture just kind of lives once you build it. The other thing too is that I really agree with what you said, and that it comes from the top down. So if culture is strong,
I brought my lunch.
To admin, the staff is going to feel that, and the students are then going to feel that as it trickles down from the top. So I completely agree with you, Mary now.
And I'll just add that basically one of the things is that expanding your vision of who is in leadership at your school. When you have 1,800 and 110 teachers, then you have to have that teacher leadership team be strong. Because I have 30 teachers on staff now, so while I have some teacher leaders, I have so much direct connection. My team has so much direct connection with the teachers. I think it's a lot easier in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So your bench, so to speak, who participates on your leadership team depends too on your size. Emily, it looks like Patsy has a comment if you want to share that, and then we'll move on.
Yeah. So Patsy at YLA, just my opinion, but every school has a strong culture. It can be positive or negative. It can be inclusive or exclusive. So it's important to define exactly the kind of culture you want and work hard to develop that. Yes, Patsy, so true. We got a couple more coming in. Sorry, when y'all type and a new comment pops up, it moves my thread up, and so I lose my place. From Chase at Lead, we've struggled with this balance the last few years. So this year we were intentional about labeling our priorities at the beginning of the year between instruction and culture, and labeling every meeting or training with which priority it was addressing, and reflecting on how often we were talking about what to keep things balanced.
That's awesome.
Yeah, awesome. And then Heidi Bishop at Lakes and Bridges, she says, leading with respect and some grace is critical to positive culture, in my personal opinion. I definitely agree with that. Yep.
Especially this year.
Yeah. And I apologize. I don't know why I'm having weird things on my end that I'm seeing in the chat box. And so, anyway, so that's why I did it twice, because I wasn't sure if it went up. So I apologize.
Totally fine. Totally fine. I like that, Chase, and that how easy is that just to say, like, okay, guys, here's our percentage. We're going to go 60-40, and then posting that, and it takes 2 seconds to say, all right, our PD today is, instruction or culture, and it just always brings you back to it. So that's a very good point. It takes 5 minutes of your time, and it pays off in the long run. So I really like that. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to open the floor to you. What else stood out to you in the introduction? Was there a quote that stood out to you that you want to kind of further discuss? Did you have a question that you would love the group to help you answer? So the mic is yours. I'm going to mute myself, and let's open the floor for the next, hopefully 5 to 10 minutes. And you have Rain, what would you like to discuss from the introduction?
So it's not necessarily something I want to discuss, but my big excitement about reading this introduction is that it seems that it's going to help leverage the time spent, because right now, as important as instruction is to me, when as principal of a charter school versus a traditional school, the amount of things that my team and I have to work on that are not related to instruction in order to keep the school going and resources funneling and take care of things that aren't in the classroom, it really impacts the ability to get in and do the feedback that I really like to. And learning how to better leverage my time with that. And then also the concept of leveraging those observations so that if I do have 20 minutes to spend, how can we really make that impactful to the teacher and the feedback that we give? And so that's been a struggle, and we started out doing really well with that at the start of this year. And then, of course, I had for those of you who don't know, my mom had a stroke, and then she passed away. And then we moved from that to the spring, and we were getting our feet back up under us with getting back in the classrooms and doing those things. And then COVID-19 hit. So just figuring out that balance of administrative time is really exciting to me.
Yeah, Mary Nell, I read this book in my master's program, but this is actually an updated version. And I think that was one of my favorite parts of this book is helping learning how to manage time and focus on what's really important. I love that about this book.
Yeah, Chase, your comment that it strangles instructional leadership time is so appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
This is Lynette Hernandez. I want to chime in for a moment. On page 3, it's talking about the effect of the highly skilled teacher. And it says that the data suggests that low socioeconomic status schools can offer students 3 consecutive years of strong teaching, and in doing so, that closes the achievement gap. Now, I know that we always say like teachers are can change your life, but this phrase here really emphasizes how transformative, just 3 years can be in the life of a student. They can be struggling. They could be way beyond grade level. But if we have strong teachers using strong strategies to really help these kids achieve, a child's life can be changed forever. And to me, that was just so it was just reinforcing, like, this is what we do. We're here to bring these kids up, to find their success, and to send them out into the world the best version that they can possibly be with the education that we give them. And that just completely it was a wow moment for me. I just wanted to share.
Thanks, Lynette. I am going to scroll up in the comments here. Sarah, I see your comment on the DVD. I will try to figure that out. I'm not sure. I think Amy at Low Country is agreeing with Mary Nell. Jerome says he highlighted that sentence too. Patsy agrees, Lynette, and same with Mary Nell. She said she underlined that sentence. Conversely, 2 years of a weak teacher can set kids back and put them at a much higher risk of never catching up. Yeah, thank you for that. Patsy at YLA says, I loved the see it, name it, do it. We have often struggled with the naming of good techniques in order to teach others. Yep. And John at Bridges, data and professional development. John, you want to unmute and talk about that?
No, help me. Hey, it's John and Deborah, and I told him he would have to expound on that. Just using the data to improve, student scores within the classroom and on statewide tests and SAT, ACT, just using that data from the previous years to see where that growth needs to take place and where those gaps are.
Yeah, and there, I think there's actually a chapter devoted to that in this book.
Yeah, I think I also highlighted that sentence is very powerful. So when you're putting faces to identify teachers, it makes sense to kind of look laterally, like, are you offering 3 years of strong teaching as a staff? Do you have a grade level somewhere that you could either up your coaching there or, make some hiring decisions? So kind of once you put faces to those names, are you truly offering your students that, 3-year promise that we would love to make to them?
Let's see, let me scroll down in the chat box here. Hey Hugh, welcome, no problem. You guys, I'm recording these sessions, so I know that everybody is so busy and we're trying to balance a lot of things. So if you are coming late or missing one, I'm gonna record them and send you all the link afterwards. I would love for you all to participate as much as you can though, just because without you, it will be Emily and I conversing and you won't learn much probably.
we can have some fun.
Yeah. Hugh says effective instruction is not about whether we taught it, it's about whether the students learned it. Yep.
Yeah, that's huge. Identifying, what that success criteria is from that lesson, and then student mastery is huge at all grade levels, from 4-year-olds to your 18-year-olds. What does success look like and how are we measuring whether they got it or not? So you're right. I agree with you.
Yeah. And then he further said that stood out because teachers oftentimes get disappointed because they believe that they worked so hard on that assignment. Yeah, That's really hard.
All right, anything else before we keep going? We'll throw this in each session. So if you have something as you continue to read that jumps out as a powerful quote or a question, feel free to offer those moving forward as well.
Hey, Emily, before we move forward, Jerome had a question. He said, who's punching home common language in their building? See page 13. What can you share? And then he says regarding how that looks and how it has been effective or not. So is anybody doing common language?
I think Jerome, with my Adept hat on, Adept in the 4.0 rubric is really going to help you set a ground for a common language in relation to best teaching practices. Beyond that, I would say in a common language of research-based strategies, so that if you're identifying a strategy that has research to back it up and that making sure that that strategy is presented across in a common language.
Mary now says, Jerome, can you give me some examples of this? And we've got a comment. What's happening? We have a comment from Hugh. I think that's important to aid and assist a strong academic culture and allows for consistency as scholars are promoted through your school. Yeah.
I'm with you on page 13. I'm just not tracking. I feel like I'm missing something in terms of, are you meaning common language with the students? Do you mean common language with the teachers? Like I know our teachers went to like one rubric for English 1, 2, and 3 to help the students like see the same thing to improve their writing instruction every year. But I'm not, I guess I need some, I'm kind of more concrete than abstract on that. So like, what do you mean by that?
So I guess we have to get further into the book to find out what, what they mean by that, right? What Paul Van Brick means by that. But that could mean a few things. So it could mean talking to your teachers when you're going through, and when we're going through the video with the professional development session that was in that clip 1, and just having common language that surrounds how we implement our curriculum. It could mean what you just said about talking to students. If we're talking about setting expectations across the building, if I'm saying, okay, our voices are at level 2, our voices are at level 1. All right, I want to see sticky fingers and laser eyes. Like, what does that mean? What are the expectations across the building? If I walk into any classroom and students are sitting on the floor and I say, okay, pockets should be flat. Do all the students know that their bottom's flat in the chair or on the carpet? So like just this across the board, using the language is what sets the expectation for the culture that we said earlier drives the academics. That's with our language with the students, but then I'd also, as hopefully we're about to see in this book, also starts to get into how we talk with our teachers when we're discussing exemplar work and just having a language to where, I don't have those words right now, but to say, this is what I mean, this level of work when I use this word, or when I'm talking about, are you sharking the room? So are you walking up and down aisles, left, right, and side to side? Are you, et cetera. So when we're coaching these teachers, are there things that we can connect to so that every teacher is connecting to the same cultural rubric, if you will, and setting this global expectation for what our building should look like?
Right. And I feel like, Jerome, setting those behavioral expectations at the beginning and those cultural expectations with a common language will impact academics later, because it's not wasting your time. So you're maximizing your moments you have in front of those students when you can do that. Another example, Mary, now that I was thinking of to kind of give you a concrete example is like vocabulary. So if you have a focus on vocabulary, maybe you have a large ESOL population and you really notice your data says that the vocabulary is lacking. Taking something like Marzano's vocabulary strategies and saying to students, okay, here's this word, we're going to work through it together, but having that same format for putting a visual to a vocabulary word, when they draw it, they write it in their own words, they use it, and then they come back and revisit it and then kind of adjust their definition there. So even something as far as a visual of a graphic organizer or a thinking map that we use across the board, it's another thing too, when you go in and you have a common language of, are we using graphic organizers, thinking maps, because you've got to think about that 6-year-old or that 16-year-old that has one teacher that wants them to use a double bubble, but one teacher is still using Venn diagrams and that kind of thing. So I think the common language and those best practice strategies, as well as the expectation for behavior, will maximize minutes across the board. I'll give a little bit more of a concrete example.
Yeah, that helps make it make sense, because we, like I said, we've done some things with like the rubrics and stuff, but in terms of like what you might call a graphic organizer or a thinking map or things like that, we really haven't done that. Like I would say that there's an interactive notebook from Avid strategy that a lot of the math teachers use, for example, but outside of that, like I think our teachers, like when you talk about some of it, like my teachers in my building, they kind of push back on some of that as being like using terms like sharking, for example. Like I totally get that and what it's conveying. My teachers push back on that the same way some of our teenagers push back, and they're like, why can't you say the 5-cent word instead of the 25-cent word? Or why do you have to name that way? They think that it's educational ease, so to speak, rather than like grabbing hold of that and then implementing that as part of their core self in the classroom. I'm not conveying that articulately, I don't think.
No, you are. I totally hear where you're coming
that's
from. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, that's the struggle that I would say that I don't have that in my school for that reason. So I'm really interested in, how that works and how that can be leveraged and how you get people to buy into that. I saw that some of y'all are talking about Teach Like a Champ with reading it and getting them to engage in that sense. We do, like Keith mentions, what is negotiable and what's non-negotiable. That's a big thing that we have, because we do give a lot of teacher autonomy. So we have like some core non-negotiables, but beyond that, we don't really have anything like that. So it just interested me.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, Emily, this reminded me of the conversation you and I were having when we were looking at the site visit protocol. One of the things that we're going to look at is student engagement. And so what is engagement? Is it that kids are sitting and watching the teacher, or is it that they're actively engaged in the process of learning? So becoming or getting our staff to a place where we all understand what engagement is, so that we're looking at it the same way, I feel like is part of this common language that the book is talking about. We also have a few more comments, so let me pop through those and then we can move on. So Heidi at Lakes and Bridges, all our teachers were trained and Teach Like a Champion for common language with culture and behavior in our school, which has allowed for consistency, which is critical for our students with dyslexia. Let's see. And Hugh kind of agrees. I imagine that's what they mean when they say common language. Keith Bailey at PD. We have a push for a universal language or common language is important, so we can have a common rubric, scale to measure progress. We have had a challenge in the past with customizing initiates from different curriculums that might define a practice with a specific term or language that may not translate to another curriculum. We've had to step back and build our own framework, and that fits with our school's vision, mission, and direction. Heidi at Lakes and Bridges follows up. We have been trained in the Leader in Me, which has promoted a common language for expectations by using the language of the 7 habits. Keith says, we just started with the Teach Like a Champion, and it's helped with our universal common language for our teachers and how they relate to and engage students in the classroom. Keith, we have shifted from teacher autonomy to more of a school-wide negotiable and non-negotiable. Sounds like what Mary Nell's doing. It has helped us define systems that will help us yield constant positive academic results. Heidi, they do have a specialized curriculum, so she's saying that helps with common language across the school. One example is that teachers use the term silent E syllable in all classes if reviewing a syllable type for decoding and coding purposes and helping with the student. We don't use quote magic E or any other terms since it creates confusion.
Yeah, I like that, Heidi. As a former interventionist, it was worse in an elementary setting when you had 6 first-grade teachers and they used 3 different strategies. Like some used the Beanie Baby strategies and some used research-based strategies. So yes, amen to that.
Yeah, and I'm fortunate because I'm a fellow or an accredited training fellow for Orton Gillingham Academy. So I do all the training, and that is a non-negotiable whenever I train. But with my teachers, they know that, and I hate to say my teachers, they're not my teachers, but with the teachers in the building, that is a non-negotiable. You will use the term that is dictated.
Which child do you go with, Lydia?
All right. Let's see. So Keith has, I'm going to paraphrase Keith's comment. Heavy teacher autonomy has led to inconsistency. Yes, I think that definitely happened. I'm just going to scroll down here.
2 of 4.
Hugh from Renaissance, school-wide common practices, I believe, is part of this common language discourse to help students recall and retain content, especially across grade levels and content areas. And then Mary Nell just asked Heidi if you could share your 3-level matrix. It sounds fabulous. So again, we would love to connect you guys. So we will just ask for permission before we do it, but to share contact information.
Yeah, we may be able to do a Google Drive, Emily, so people can.
Yeah, that would be a great idea.
Dump their resources there. Not that I don't dump in a negative way, but so you have a place to store everything and everyone can have access to it. We can work on that. Great idea. All right, so moving forward, this is one of the things when Emily and I were creating, like, how are we going to run these sessions to be most useful? And I feel like no matter how many years experience you have, it's powerful when you can leave and be like, okay, what can I do now? What do I need help with? Like, what do I need my staff's input on before I implement it? And kind of, here are the biggest things that I should remember from this training or from this session, this chapter. So these are what I envisioned to implement immediately. And then after each of these to kind of open the floor to you. What else did I maybe miss that, or that you feel like is more important for you to implement immediately? So implement immediately. Having a self-critical eye and a good to great mentality. You might have to internally coach yourself on, but kind of making that change and making that decision to go good to great at all times is an easy fix for yourself. It just may be a little bit of an internal struggle as you get used to it. And then keeping your eye on instruction. What else do y'all feel like you could implement immediately from the introduction? And when I say keeping an eye on instruction, I'll elaborate a little bit. Mary Nell said it's hard as a charter school leader. Your schedule easily get taken up in Epicenter and in tasks and in finance and in board meeting minutes and in all of those things. So kind of just reminding yourself and promising yourself time to ensure that instruction is at the top of your list. Okay. What can you implement with the support of your staff? Audit strength of instruction versus culture is something that you can, that's a hard thing to do on your own and implement immediately, but with time and staff buy-in and staff discussions, you can audit your instruction and culture together and decide what percentage are you at currently, where do you want to be, and how are you going to get there? Anything else from this chapter that stood out that you could implement with the support of your staff?
I know that one might look a little different right now because we are all remote. We're wrapping the end of our school years, and so we don't have teachers in classrooms maybe like we would normally kind of audit the strength of instruction. But maybe that's one that you can kind of reflect on and think about the observations that you were able to do over the year before school let out.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a comment from Courtney at Midlands Middle. She says, I agree that my time is the one thing I can sort of control and change immediately. I started a new time management strategy just before COVID happened, and I need to get myself back to it. Hugh has carving out a non-negotiable time when you as a leader dedicate to putting your eyes on data, on student engagement, and on giving teachers feedback based on what you briefly observe taking place in their classes. And Mary Nell said, Courtney, can you share more about that? So I was going to ask Courtney too. What are you doing? Like, what's your new time management strategy, Courtney?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, well, my school's a little different because our hours are strange. Our students don't come in till 11 and our staff comes in at 9:30. So I was normally getting there, I was showing up at 8:30 just so I had some time before everybody else got in the building to be able to focus on, reporting and just to be able to have some uninterrupted time. But I found that my time was constantly being interrupted anyway. So I was getting there earlier and earlier and was never really getting that uninterrupted time. So I just told my staff, I said, please don't, find me rude or anything, but I am shutting my door until 9:30, which is when they're supposed to be there. And before that time is my time. I'm getting there. I'm and it doesn't matter what I'm doing during that time, but I'm getting it uninterrupted. I don't answer the phone. I'm usually not responding to emails. I'm just trying to knock off reports and, whatever else it is that I needed to do. And they were actually pretty receptive to that because then at 9:30, my door opens and I very much have an open door policy, but it gave me just literally that 1 hour of the day that I could get stuff done without being interrupted. And it changed my whole outlook for the day. So it worked for me. And then all this happened, and now, my dogs are taking my attention. My kids are, it's all out the window now, and I need to get back to it.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you for sharing. And then the last thing that stood out to me, go ahead, Emily.
I was going to say, Jerome says, thanks for that. And he said, schedule a meeting with yourself at least once a week. Yeah, that might be a really good way to get some just solo uninterrupted work time.
Yeah, I do that. I would rather get on my email. I think, y'all don't want to see that screen. Grace and I have had interactions at like 6 o'clock in the morning. Like, what are you doing awake? Why are you answering? But guess what? That's when I get the most done because the schools still aren't open and I have some quiet. And so some of you will reply to me that early, but yeah, I think carving out the time where you feel is protected is so important. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like Courtney said, her completely understood that and has respected it because they know she's actively engaged in something that's important. And I think that they'll even respect you more if you say, like, these are my times that you may and may not, bother me, and just respecting that time is important. I like that.
Yeah. Hugh also added he would advise everyone to look into the Together Leader Training Program. It helps you as a leader to take what you currently do and streamline it to be really effective. So that might be something to look into. Maybe something to use your Title II funding for. We can see. Patsy says, YLA Principal Blankenship actually wrote into her schedule time to visit classrooms daily and provide feedback during planning times, and it really strengthened her relationship with teachers and her knowledge of what's happening in every classroom. That's awesome. Mary Nell said she did that also. It was so hard to hold consistently, and she really needed the consistency. And Christy just said, Patsy, I noticed that in the example in the introduction, and I want to do that. And I was thinking as Courtney was talking, by giving yourself that hour and closing your door and saying, this is what I need to be doing now, and then my door's open. I wonder if your staff found you to be more responsive and, not as distracted maybe by the emails that are coming through and tasks that are coming through when they need you. So might be a benefit there.
Yeah. All right, Lynette, the floor is yours. I see your hand raised.
I'm one of those that who don't have the chat function, so I'm going to just keep raising my hand like a good student.
No problem.
One of the things that was interesting as I was reading the introduction was, just kind of taking in the fact that, the students and everybody, the teachers and administrators and everybody was kind of thrown into the situation with COVID. And it was kind of like, how do we continue the learning process and how do we do it well? And we know that there were a variety of experiences that our students have reported to us, and maybe they were inconsistent in their output and all of that. So when I think about that and I think about this book, I think this is the best time to kind of assess where we're at, fill in gaps, make improvements, self-assess, and really come up with a better plan, like some of these ideas that we're going to be talking about in this book, and really go from good to great and more if even possible. Because I really think, these students, they've emailed me and they're like, my gosh, Ms. Hernandez, I just can't wait to go back to school. They're dying to come back to school because it's what they know. And, we deserve to put something in place that works for us, that works for them. And it's a great time to kind of revamp as needed. So I think that this is really timely, and I think it's important. And I think that, if we have to find a silver lining in this COVID, maybe this is it.
Yeah, you have a little bit of time to breathe and reset. Yeah, great point.
Great. Okay, and then I should remember this. This is the one that stood out to me. In this introduction, she used the basketball analogy with her team, talking about what makes education effective. The answer, good teaching. Don't just notice the superstars, but pay attention to how all the players work in unison. Identifying and putting faces to those high flyers, the ones that may be struggling, and even your staff that's in the middle. So kind of looking at your staff as a whole. Does anybody else have anything to add that you could implement immediately, that you could implement over time with support of your staff, or something that stood out to you that you really should remember from the introduction? All right. Okay, so looking ahead to session 2, we're going to meet again on June 8th, which is a quick turnaround for you. We'll go back to Mondays, or we'll start Monday now. So your pre-read for session 2 is going to be chapter 1. One is going to talk about data-driven instruction. This is the longest chapter in the book, so schedule yourself some time. You'll want to really digest this chapter properly. It's an important one. It's not just the lengthiness, but it also has some really great information. So just a warning ahead of time. I wouldn't wait until Sunday if you want to truly dig into this chapter. The pre-reflection that we're offering you and ask to take some time on as you read and after you read chapter 1, reflect on your last 3 staff meetings and data meetings. These may be, you may have kind of just gone survival mode staff meetings with COVID and kind of more legit. So you may need to kind of think back to staff meetings and data meetings that you had pre-COVID. But reflect on those last 3 meetings and what action steps did your educators leave with? So if you were an educator in that staff meeting, what did you leave with that you could actually put into action? Okay. What pre-work did you do as the leader of that staff meeting ahead of time to ensure that your minutes were used properly within that staff or data? So you're kind of just reflecting on your last 3 staff meetings. Jerome, you may need to envision your first 3. But in your last 3 staff meetings, what did your educators actually walk out with, and what did you put in place ahead of time to ensure that you maximize each and every minute? So we'll start our discussion with that next, you sharing out regarding your last 3 staff meetings. Any questions about session 2 and next week, Monday the 8th?
Do we have a hand somewhere? Lynette, if you wanted to say something, feel free. I don't know if your hand's still up or if you got something new. Nope. Okay.
I forgot to put my hand down, sorry.
No problem. Let me go back to the chat here, and I will let you know that next week I won't be with you guys. Emily is going to be flying solo. I've got a leader session that I cannot miss, so go easy on her. But I will watch the recording and catch up just so that we're all kind of in the same place and have a common language.
Thanks, y'all.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
problem. Thank you
We'll
guys
stick
for
around.
engaging with us.
Yes, we definitely appreciate you engaging. We'll stick around for a couple minutes in case anyone has any questions, or you know how to reach both of us by email and phone. And I'll just end the way we started. We're not going to survey you after each session. We want you to be in this text and not on your devices answering questions for us. But after you have feedback, please feel free to send it to us, because we want to make sure that your minutes are used properly.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, Keith.